Welcome back, developers. In this video, we're going to look at something called aggregate functions. That is, functions built into SQL that allow us to perform certain types of tasks on the data inside our database. We're going to look at things like count, which obviously gets a count of a number of elements, sum, min, max, and a few others while we're at it, as well as some other special keywords that we get to use that are only available to us when we're using aggregate functions. So let's take a quick look at what something like this might look like. So I'm over here in a query window in Heidi SQL. I'm going to say select. I'm going to say count star from customers. This is going to return the number of customers we will have inside of our customers table. And you can see that there are 20 right there. Now, what would happen if I want to see, for example, the count of the customers by the same first name? Well, let's see that real quick. I'm going to come over here and say first name, comma, count from customers. And if I run this, you notice it says the first name is Jack, and then I have a count of 20. But what's the odds that all of my customers have the exact same name? Probably 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a new keyword called group by. And this is only available to us when we're using aggregate functions. So I'm going to keep the first part the same. And then after customers, I'm going to say group by. And notice this is built in because Heidi SQL is going to capitalize it. First name. When I click run, you notice that now we see a bunch of different names and then a count of how many times that name appears. So very often we're going to want to use that group by in order to create little subsets of data, as you can see with this example. Now count, and notice our aggregate function is a function, so we have those parentheses. Star usually is slow because it's looking for a count and then it looks at all the data. Well, MySQL has a special built-in performance enhancement that says if it looks at star, it actually does some special stuff behind the scenes to make this a faster than if we were to specify count by a specific field. That's right, we can count any specific field and therefore find things that are, for example, only not null. So this is a kind of an interesting example and where MySQL winds up being a little bit faster for us if we use the count star. Now let's look at a couple other things we might find. So I'm going to say select. I'm going to say sum, product total from orders. This lets me see how much money in total my orders table has for selling of my products. If I want to group this by my customer, I can then say group by customer ID. And when I execute that, you can see that it's listed there. Of course, I don't know what customer ID it is. I would have to organize that by adding that customer ID field. So there's some interesting things like this that I can use. I can replace sum with min. Now you can see it lists a group of items once again, but this is the minimum for each customer. If I want to find for overall my orders to find what my smallest order overall was, I could do something like that. Likewise, I can find the max. So there's a variety of different aggregate functions that I get that I can use. Typically, we're going to use things like count, sum, min, and max, but there are others. Now let's take a quick look at what something might be like if I want to use a condition with this, where count customer ID is greater than 2. If I run this, I'm going to get an error. And you'll see here it has in values of group function. They might say, but I'm not using the group by. Why is it getting this? Well, it's actually not liking that where clause. You see, I can't put an aggregate function inside of a where. If I want to use an aggregate function and then filter and select down, I have to say something like having. And now you can see that it's summing up all my product totals based on the having. Okay, so let's say I want to see a list of all my customers who have made more than one purchase. So I'm going to say something like select customer ID from orders. If I just run this, I get just my customer IDs. This allows me to kind of see who's made more than one purchase. This is kind of good, but it's a lot to filter through, especially if I had a lot of data. This is where this aggregate function really works. So I'm going to come over here and say count star. Now, if I run this without doing a group by, it counts everything up and puts with the first number for my customer ID. That's not what I want. So I'm going to say group by customer ID. Now I can see how many times an individual customer purchased something. But then I can say something like having count star greater than or equal to 2. So now I'm only going to find people who have made at least 2 purchases. That is repeat customers. Now you notice I'm down to only 3 customers who have made more than one purchase. I'm only seeing that information. So this is where I get a chance to kind of build up my data queries, provide more relevant, meaningful information. And if I had 50,000 records, this would still work. Now, aggregate functions will slow us down. This is something we have to be careful of, but it's faster than doing the processing outside the database. The real question is this thing that I'm going to be aggregating something I want to store? And therefore, I calculate it once when I may not need to worry about my processing power, and I focus on just one customer at a time as they update themselves. So as they make an order, I can maybe do a lifetime purchase order amount, or I can do a lifetime order count or something like that. I can add that to my customer table. It's a lookup field, but it's calculated every time they make a change to it. And that way it's a lot faster for me to access when I need to access a lot of data real quickly. These are things that as a database designer, we always have to be thinking about. It's something you want to be thinking about as well. Hopefully you like this. And if you like seeing how we can start to build up some of these data pieces, you might want to check out our next video, which is going to be on how do we do that? How do we start making more and more complex queries that get us really relevant information? So stay tuned for that.